Hey guys, and welcome back to my latest video. I wanted to make this video to talk about my first impressions of Far Cry 5, which just came out this past Tuesday. It is the first game in the Far Cry series that I've played, so I wanted to kind of weigh in on my thoughts on it so far. I've played roughly, I'd say, 5 hours so far, and I do have pretty strong impressions, and I thought to anyone who hasn't gotten the game, who might be considering it, or who does have the game and kind of wants to compare first impressions, this video might be useful. So I'll break it down the way I break down my game reviews just to keep the structure similar, but it won't be as quite in-depth as those because these are just first impressions, so there's still a lot to learn and a lot to look at. Like I said, I've never played any entries in the Far Cry series previous. It's one of those series that I'm well aware of because they're popular games. They're games lots of people talk about. They're games that are posted quite often on commentaries and on Reddit and in gaming circles in general. I'm not the biggest shooter fan. I'm not really drawn to games specifically because they're shooters. I was drawn to this one for a couple reasons. One, because the story and the subject matter here got a lot of buzz before the game came out. That's because the game features a depiction and a setting within the United States that's a little bit controversial because the antagonists in this game are a religious cult who kind of play into a lot of the sort of far right-wing social and political, I guess, systems and viewpoints that are kind of hotbed topics, hot topics in the U.S. in general right now. So before this game even came out, there was a lot of people talking about it was going to be interesting to see the depiction of really American Christian antagonists in a time where things really seem to be hot button when it comes to anything religious, right versus left, any of that stuff. And on top of just being interested by sort of the controversy, I'm also just interested in the subject matter itself. I'm not a particularly religious person, so I'm not drawn to it for that reason. I'm more drawn to it because I like games that aren't afraid to tackle real social issues, games that aren't afraid to kind of shine a light on things that have a real basis in the real world, that aren't afraid to sort of, touch on things that can be a bit taboo. And this seemed like it could be a fun and interesting one. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the story discussion, but additionally, it was just a game that seemed to, as previous games in the series did, provide a lot of freedom to the player. Seems like sort of a series and a game that allows you to kind of make of it what you will, and that combined with what I knew the story was about just got me interested enough to want to check this out. So I bought it. I've played, like I said, about 5 hours so far, and here just to quickly break down my thoughts on 4 different sections of my opinion thus far. The first is the story. The story so far is really interesting. It starts really strong. Like I said, you play a deputy character who is tasked with going along with a couple others to to arrest a religious leader in Montana who runs essentially a cult called the Project at Eden's Gate. You go there to arrest him, things go awry right off the bat, and you kind of take off from there. It was a really strong opening because it really blends style with creepiness, with some fairly impressive pacing. The main bad guys here, the Seed family that run this cult, your introduction to them is really strong, and their leader, Joseph Seed, you go in to arrest him, and just the way it unfolds, the choice of music, the really creepy atmosphere, the acting and voice acting of the character himself, just really well done. In order for a game like this to succeed, I feel like all that stuff needs to be pretty well done because, like I said, I first and foremost wasn't drawn to this just because it's a shooter. I wanted a story that interested me, a game system that interested me. And from the get-go, this does. The character is immediately very creepy, very unsettling, very memorable. Everything about it is believable enough. You walk into the church where he's preaching, and it's believable enough to kind of scare you from a real-world perspective, but it's also sort of over-the-top enough to give you that gameplay thrill. So I'm really excited to see how this game plays out. You kind of use that as a jumping off point to then sort of try to form and build up resistance forces in the area to oppose the cult. So I'm about 5 hours in. I've touched base with a couple of the residents in the area. You're kind of going from area to area within this Montana, I guess, community or this little subsection of Montana, to where the different lieutenants or different sort of henchmen of the main Seed, Joseph Seed, sort of the areas they control, and you have stuff to do within each one. I'm interested in learning more about each of them. They all seem interesting from the little sort of synopses you get on them. But like I said, the main bad guy's interesting. The setup's pretty interesting. Well acted, well voice acted, compelling enough, raw enough that I've really enjoyed it so far, and I'm excited to see where it'll go. The music's been great so far. The instrumental stuff that sort of serves as the menu and title music and also plays interspersed throughout the game is really great. It's sort of a calming, peaceful, almost like just really atmospheric. This really sort of swells. It's perfect mood music for when you're just kind of walking through the Montana wilderness. But then that's interspersed with some awesome action music when you get into action sequences. Like the song by The Vines, I think it is Get Free, starts playing during one action sequence. Song I definitely wasn't expecting at all, but it fits the tone really well. They seem to have a really good sense of kind of breaking up the different moods of the game, from frenetic, frantic, and action-packed to the quieter moments, and doing justice to both through the music. So the music I've really enjoyed so far. Like I said, the voice acting's been good. Some pretty funny dialogue. The actors all seem pretty committed. The main villain and, sort of the characters you've met along the way thus far, about 5 hours in, have all been fairly memorable, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what that has to bring further on. The visuals are a little bit of a mixed bag for me. The environments look great. Kind of running around Montana looks great. Having not played these games before, I didn't really know if this is something they were prided on or not. Graphically, the animations, especially of the other characters, bother me a little bit. You've sort of got these other NPCs that can help you join forces with you and go around to, take on enemies and whatnot. And just some of the animations, the sort of buggy, herky-jerky way that the NPCs move, it's not the best. I don't know if that's something that'll be fixed with the patch or it's just kind of par for the course with these kind of games. But for the most part, the environments look good. The animations, in terms of the variety of them, is great. It's just the way that the NPCs move, at least early on in the game, kind of took me out of the moment a couple times. But by the by, I think they did a really good job designing this. Montana makes for a really interesting setting. Just wandering the wilderness looks great. Overall, I can't really complain. So far, graphics have been something like an 8 out of 10 for me. But like I said, I think as the game goes on, I'm kind of excited to see what different environments you traverse, how the game sort of develops in that way. And finally, gameplay. The gameplay has been a lot of fun, and I think even early on, I kind of know what I'm getting into now, having not played one of these games. You have so many options thrown at you. You basically escape from the intro to the game. You're thrown into a nice big open world, and you have so many options available to you. You have story missions you can go do to start exploring, I guess, key members and key aspects of the resistance you're trying to build. But you can also wander off and do everything from scavenge for resources, hunt, fish, recruit townsfolk and animals as allies. I already got a dog as a ally, a specialist. I think there's like a bear and other animals as well. You can upgrade guns, vehicles. You can take on submissions. You complete in-game challenges to unlock perks, which change your character or provide new utility items like a parachute or a glide suit and things like that. I can already tell I'm going to love the amount this game allows you to do because, like I said, I hope the story is intriguing enough and good enough to keep me interested throughout. But if it turns out to be not quite as good as I hoped, a lot of the side stuff seems fun enough that'll give some extra incentive to play. Open world can be sort of hit or miss for me, but so far this open world seems pretty fun. It seems like a lot to do and not an empty game. Everywhere you turn, there's kind of interesting things to do and not just a giant, vast world with stuff kind of interspersed throughout. So the gameplay so far is pretty fun. The gunplay has been pretty good. I've been using a bow primarily so far and really enjoying that. The stealth aspect's been pretty good. The opening of the game presents you with some in-vehicle combat, which I feel like is going to be a bigger part as you go on. And just the entire system of building up the resistance, liberating areas that the cult currently has held, freeing people. It just seems like an absolute vast amount to look, out to do right now, but I'm looking forward to all of it. So to sort of summarize everything, I'm excited that the story is kind of dealing with the taboo, sort of mature subject matter. I can tell it's going to be a crazy game in parts, but I am excited to see kind of what the game has to offer, and I haven't spoiled anything for myself there. The music's really good, a nice variety of instrumental that I think is original soundtrack stuff that I really enjoyed, and some fun, rock songs that kind of kick in when the action starts. The visuals, nothing incredible so far. A pretty looking game and a really cool environment in Montana with some animations, especially from the NPCs, that are a little bit hit or miss. And the gameplay seems really fun, really balanced. Like, there's a ton of stuff to do. I barely scratched the surface of it. I'm hoping the story keeps me intrigued, but if it doesn't, I know that there's a lot of side content to take on. So I'm looking forward to pouring a lot of hours into this game, seeing what it has to offer. So far, if you've played a Far Cry previously, I imagine this one's probably more of the same, but apparently, according to reviews, is pretty good as far as the Far Cry series goes. So if you've enjoyed previous installments, I have to imagine you'd enjoy this one. If you haven't played it like me, and you like games that deal with some relatively hot-button topics that are full of crazy action, profanity, violence, a real R-rated, M-rated game, I think this is right up your alley. Open world gaming fans, this is right up your alley. Seems like it would appeal to a lot of people because, like I said, I'm not a big shooter fan, but so far this has appealed to me. So those are just my first impressions of Far Cry 5. I plan to dive back in, get a little bit further, and then give a review when I finally beat the game. I'm not sure when that'll be because it's a big open world game, but hopefully my early views gave you some idea if you might enjoy this game or not. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you again soon.